Here's a big question to get to right now. Do we have a wage shortage in Canada, or do we have a labor shortage in Canada? You hear people talking about this labor shortage right now, right? And we've been talking about this for so long. Well, I started this show April 12th, but if you were with me before then, we were talking about it before then too. Imagine a world where everyone can pursue their potential and not be held back by basic material constraints or unsafe working conditions. And we can have that world. Our first show, remember when Evelyn Forget joined us and she was talking about basic income and how this can help everyone in the country, not just the people who need that actual income, but the impact it will have across Canada on our people and on our economy. Well, now that we're approaching the election, this is a key federal issue. What's going to happen with it? And what about CERB? All of the talk this week about CERB and wages and labor shortages. What's really going on? Joining us now, we have the CEO and founder of UBI Works, Floyd Marinescu. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. You have a pretty steep hill ahead of you with UBI Works, but I feel as though right now we're on the precipice. This is probably the closest we've ever been to making basic income part of, I guess you could say, a normal conversation in Canada. Where do you feel that we're at right now, coming up to an election, looking at what the pandemic has done, the place that it's put our country in? Do you feel as though this is a point where basic income can become a key federal issue?
I think it already is an issue for voters. 3/4 of voters are for basic income. None of the parties have officially come out for it at this point in time. But you know how elections go. Things can change last minute. We certainly intend to put it on the map to help organize people to be seen. We can mobilize tens of thousands of people to petition their MPs. This is certainly a time. I'm not sure about this election, but I am sure about another thing is that basic income, the interest and the need for it will only grow. We are entering a time, we're already in a time of rapid automation. We've seen it during the pandemic. Our economy is almost as big as it was pre-pandemic with hundreds of thousands less people employed. The U.S. GDP is at pre-pandemic levels with 10 million less workers. That is an automated economy that needs less workers. This is only going to get worse in the years to come, which means people are going to be worse off. And the need for basic income is only going to grow. If it's not this election, it will be the next one.
Do you feel as though CERB reinforced, validated the argument for basic income?
Absolutely. So millions of people, working people who never would have thought that they would ever need income support, suddenly needed it in a rush. And this validated for a lot of voters, a big voting bloc, that, hey, we can all use help in times of transition. Times of transition are not only for people in poverty. It's for students who need to be in school longer. It's for mothers who need to be with their children longer. It's for normal people who are in between jobs, want to retrain, start a business, do new things. So a lot of people experienced what it could be like to have a basic income, although CERB in many ways was an anti-basic income because you would lose all of the money if you went back to work. So it had the same disincentives for work in some ways that welfare programs do. Versus with the basic income, you would keep part of the money when you go back to work, which means we eliminate working poverty. 2/3 of people in poverty right now are working, which is kind of a tragedy. Basic income would fix that.
It's astounding, actually, that CERB wasn't given to people with disabilities because we have 22% of Canadians who have disabilities. A chunk of those Canadians are unable to work. Their disability precludes them, yet they were still forced to live off of whatever meager disability benefits they receive, and they weren't given CERB. Basic income can make such a difference. It's not just about our economy, it's about public health, right?
Absolutely. During the trial that happened in Manitoba in the 70s, we saw an 8% reduction in hospitalization. Now with CERB, we saw a 40% decrease in crime in some places, like decrease in stress levels. There's a doctor who in Toronto who, when a lot of people come to him, he prescribes income. He literally helps people with lower incomes qualify for programs they should be on because money at the end of the day drives stress for a lot of people. and a lot of people are living check to check, far worse off than previous generations. The labor market is just not working the way it used to.
Floyd, do you know this doctor's name? I'd love to get this doctor on the show.
I will get you that info. I don't have it offhand.
Floyd Marinescu is with us right now. He's the CEO of UBI Works. And, you know, it's funny because the Parliamentary Budget Officer recently released a study on GBI, and it shows that it's affordable and it benefits the people you would expect, but it also benefits the people who don't necessarily need it. It benefits the rest of Canadians. Yet for some reason, when people talk about basic income, and there's so many different definitions of it, you're calling it universal basic income. That's different than, for instance, Evelyn Forget, who's just such an expert, an advocate when it comes to this. And she was talking about the different types of basic incomes, the way it's defined. And that's another problem, but we'll get to that in a second. But this is something that even the Parliamentary Budget Officer sees that this is affordable and it benefits everybody in the country. But what are the arguments you hear against it that have actually been proven wrong by studies, by Parliamentary Budget Office, by all of these sorts of, I guess you could say, people who are experts on the situation versus people who don't know much about it and just assume? What are the myths that come with basic income?
I think the three biggest concerns we often hear. One is that people won't work. And that's simply not true. There have been dozens of studies in the last 50 years. Over 105,000 people were in basic incomes trials and kept working. We only saw a small reduction for students who are in school longer, in mothers who are with their children a bit longer. That's really it. For the most part, people in extreme poverty actually worked more because they can now afford the tools and means of their own emancipation. And here in Canada, even looking with CERB as an example, statistically speaking, the majority of people who are on CERB did go back to work, even those who are making less than $2,000 a month. And there are even stories of people who went back to work for free because they wanted to help their boss, like not lose their business. So a lot of these stories of people not working are anecdotal. I'm certain like there are certain examples where that may have happened, but there's a number of other reasons why someone may not have gone back to work, again, on an anecdotal level. So overall, this work incentive issue it just simply hasn't been established. What we might see is that people actually upgrading their work, pursuing different industries. 40% of people in a CERB survey have learned a new skill, taken an online course. 10% have started a new business. So people are actually moving upwards when they have the means to do so, and that's a good thing. The second major objection is that this is too expensive. We can't afford it. That Parliamentary Budget Office study showed that the government could pay for a basic income that would reduce poverty by 50%. So it's a basic income, and that could be done by simplifying a whole myriad of tax credits that we have, just basically taking all the tax credits off and using that to pay a basic income, which would simplify the tax system. And also, again, with the basic income, you're restoring pathways into the middle class, and you're helping lower income working people as well to not be in poverty while they're working. And the third major objections we hear is that, well, we shouldn't charge working people to pay for people who aren't working. Well, hopefully I've established that basic income is not for people who are not working. It's in some ways for everyone. It's an insurance security blanket for everyone, but it's also for millions of people who are working and are working in poverty. And we are actually working on with some economists on a way to pay for basic income that will not cost people who make less than $100,000 or $150,000 a month a year, and will not hurt the economy. It is very much possible to tax passive forms of wealth gain that mainly affect the 1%. To pay for a basic income so that most working people would never have to pay for it, and in fact be better off because you'd have a larger economy. And a third misconception is that it could hurt the economy. But we've seen studies, including one here in Canada from the Canadian Centre of Economics Analysis, that shows that if you increase these cash flows in the economy from the bottom up through a basic income, you see some sort of like a trickle-up economics effect. It would create 600,000 jobs across the country, and it would add $80 billion to GDP, because a lot of people right now, people are a precious resource, and millions of people are living below basic needs. And if you simply improve the amount of money that's being spent from the bottom up in this economy, it would stimulate demand, stimulate consumption. Our economy is 2/3 driven by consumption, and that would stimulate businesses to hire. We'd all be better off.
I've talked to MPs from all of the major political parties, and I've had from each political party, I've had MPs support basic income. The difference is there are different definitions of it. Some are looking at universal basic income. Some are looking at basic income. Differences just even in the definition itself. But it's also used, the term is used incorrectly sometimes because people will call it one thing, but they'll mean another. So the definition is very loose. There's no standard definition unless you're speaking with somebody like Evelyn Forget, who will give you each definition for each different term. But the other issue, I suppose, with universal basic income or basic income, depending what you're calling it, is that if we don't understand the terms, even people are not going to understand exactly what it is. And I think that people just keep seeing it as free money instead of stimulating money. If you look at all of the free money, if you want to talk about free money, if you want to look at all of the corporate welfare that's given out, if you want to look at all of the tax breaks that are given out, that probably amounts to more money than we would be giving out with a basic income.
That PBO study recently that came out showed that you could reverse a whole bunch of regressive tax credits, literally like tax subsidies in the code that mainly benefit the highest income earners. You could pay a basic income that's not even touching the corporate welfare and subsidies for all manner of businesses out there. Absolutely, it's true.
Have you seen the shift in how people are looking at basic income now, or the shift in demand for basic income now? Just as someone who is, you're right there, you are a source for people to go to. Have you seen this shift in the past even few months?
Yes. Really the past year. As I mentioned, like millions of people have now come online understanding the need for basic income, who previously would never have imagined that they would ever have needed something like this. So there's a voting block, and it's big. I mean, UBI Works also started only a couple of years ago, and we've been able to quickly organize. We have 30,000 Facebook followers, like 60,000 email list, and we're doing whatever we can to organize. So we've also seen interest from MPs for the first time this last year. We had two MPs from two different parties make motions and bills in the House, including Bill 276, which we helped advise on some of the language in that bill, and it's went to the first half of second reading. Sorry, that's 273, I believe. It's 7 in the morning,
Yes.
and that hopefully when the House reconvenes in September, that gets voted on, moves to committee, and that is a bill to establish a national strategy for basic income, which would involve the government and the provinces determining how to make one and to possibly do a pilot. There is now interest. I think there's going to be growing interest because I mentioned earlier, like the economic trends that are making life harder for working people are only getting worse. Wages are not going up fast enough. Cost of living is increasing. People are working multiple jobs. More than the 40-hour work week is a joke for a lot of people. And as our economy continues to automate, this is just going to get worse. So this is not going away. Like, this is going to become a crescendo in the coming years. In a few years, Elon Musk will press a button, and the entire Tesla fleet will become a self-driving competitor to Uber overnight. We'll be seeing self-driving cars. We already see kiosks in all kinds of stores that are replacing humans. This is going to get worse. And the one thing that, if there's one thing your readers take away about the impact of automation and technology, it's lowered wages. Because the more automation we have, that's coming on too fast for the labor market and the education, our education systems to respond to, means that you have excess supply of labor. And we already have that. We have a lot more people than there are good jobs, and certainly a lot more people than there are middle-class jobs. And a lot of people now, we are experiencing downwards pressure on wages, and that's been the case for many decades. So life is literally getting harder, and it's going to get a lot harder, a lot faster, as some of the new technologies that are being developed are coming online.
Well, a happy long weekend to you too, Floyd. Holy, you just like, you took the hammer and you went pow, pow, bam, bam. But it's very true.
Yeah.
And
my background is in technology. I run a technology education company. This UBI stuff is a part-time thing I'm doing because I think the world needs it. So I'm speaking from that perspective.
If Elon Musk can press a button to make all of that happen, you'd think by now he'd be able to press a button to make chocolate cake calorie-free. Don't you think? Don't you think if he were that great, he'd be able to? Yeah, exactly. You're in tech. You figure this out for us, Floyd, okay? If people want to learn more.
So anything's possible.
Yeah, anything is possible. You could also make me taller while you're at it. I wouldn't mind a few more inches. If people want to learn more about UBI Works, where can they find you?
UBIworks.ca. Also, we're on pretty much every social media channel. Join the conversation on our Facebook page. There's thousands of people talking every day about it. You can learn a lot about basic income. Follow us on our website and on various social channels of your choice. Thank you.
Floyd Marinescu, he's the CEO of UBI Works. Thanks so much for making. You're going to make everything else I say today sound that much happier. So you actually served a fantastic purpose. Thanks for joining us, and a happy long weekend to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
To you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
To you, sir.
Thank you.